So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We are excited to have you all on. Thank you to my guests. Thank you to everyone that's viewing. People are signing on quickly, so I appreciate that. So first, I am Arwen Woodson. I'm the managing partner for Woodson and Associates, and we're doing a lot of live streaming and interaction during this COVID-19 situation so that we can provide the same services that we were prior to this. And so this is the first part in a three-part series on Black and Educated. So I'm going to turn it over to my guests for a second and let them introduce themselves to you, share with you who they are, what they do. And so I will turn it over to you.
Morning, everybody. My name is Drew Johnson. I currently work at North Carolina Central University, where I'm the program coordinator of the McNair Scholars Program, and that's for basically getting first-gen low-income students into graduate school and help them pursue their PhD. I also have a small business with one of my former teammates, my best friend, where we kind of focus on student athletes transitioning to life after sports. And we kind of have a public forum as far as our podcast and kind of go around different universities to try to help empower student athletes.
That's awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Jame'l Hodges. I'm a student affairs professional. I currently own my business, which is Jamelevate, Jamelevate, an opportunity to uplift students from K through 12 and college in terms of understanding their full potential and leadership.
Dr. Hodges, tell us a little bit more about what your company does and how you work with schools and, how people can reach out and get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, the website is Jamelevate. It's www.jamelevate.com. The email address is jamelevate@gmail.com. I created Jamelevate when I was in graduate school as an opportunity to really give back to our HBCU, PWI, Hispanic studying institutions, all of our institutions, as well as our K through 12 population, to really teach them about branding, about leadership, about public speaking, about sitting in the T-zone, some of the core fundamentals we learn in leadership development to really assist those students. I've spoken at NASAP. My experience in terms of higher education goes from Lehigh University, Cal Poly Pomona, the University of Georgia, Tennessee State University, and most recently I served as the Associate Vice President at Virginia State University, my alma mater. And so I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk about being a Black male in education and to, of course, plug our platforms and our entrepreneurship. So thank you for this.
No problem at all. So my first question is, name one challenge that you have faced as a Black male being educated in America.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first. Go ahead.
Well, I think the obvious one would be serving as an example for all. I think that can be a burden placed on men of color, especially in non-diverse populations and institutions, where we tend to be the go-to person for the Black Student Union, the Black students, the Black faculty and staff, the Black experience, and I think that can be daunting at times. But I think that we are resilient and that we work through it. But I think that we have an extra layer of pressure placed on us when that happens. And so I think I think for me, that would be one of the biggest challenges I've had in working in higher education. And then the pressure of then being that voice for those students, supporting those students and those faculty members and the community locally, but then still having to do the day-to-day work as well. And that's the pressure that other people don't have.
I'd have to echo what Dr. Hodges says, is that, the stereotypes looking at Black men as a whole is just sad. And it's so funny that I know you brothers and other brothers that are very well doing good, either from an educational career, whatever it may be. But the stereotype is that we're not supposed to be doing good, that we fall into these tropes and different things. And so every time I walk into a space, I realize I have to be cognizant of how, specifically if I'm not around people that look like me, how I talk, how I walk, to make others feel comfortable. And it's not always the case, right? The opposite way. So you can walk into a room full of people that don't look like you, They want to know who you are, but at the same time, they're not making that space where it's comfortable for you to be you
Right.
from that perspective. And so, the biggest thing is just, that's why when I got into college and realized like there is so much more opportunity for us. And this whole notion of there's more black men in jail, that's not true. Ivy Tosin told us that, all this other great stuff, because I know brothers like you, and I know plenty of brothers like you, and even the folks that are watching right now from that perspective. The problem is the media. The problem is all these perceptions people have of black men as a whole, or they only think we can do two things: shoot a basketball, or run football, or be an entertainer. They don't realize that we can be Dr. Hodges, you know what I'm saying, and all that other great stuff, and do great things. I mean, our history shows what we have been able to do as black men as a whole. And we just need, what's the old saying? If they see it, they'll be it. They
That's
need to
right.
see more than somebody running a football. The draft has been over the last 3 days. I wish all them brothers good luck. I wish all of them the best of luck, but I hope they had their money in 5 years. I hope they're smart with what they do, and use that to leverage not life after football. Because I've ran into a lot of guys I know that play professionally, and I'm better off than them. Let's just put it like that. And so again, how do we support each other as black men as well? Is very key and critical. I think in higher education we do a good job, and I think it needs to happen in other fields as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest challenge I've had, like previous two brothers have said, me personally, I have a passion working with student athletes. And so going into a space and trying to show specifically black male student athletes that you can do more than dribble, you're more than an athlete, getting them to open their ears to that, it's kind of challenging at first. But I've noticed that, building those relationships over time, when they gain that trust, then they start to see and listen to what you have to say as far as like try to emulate certain things. So just as far as getting them to listen and open up and
Mm-hmm.
see that, hey, this doesn't just have to be your only path. There's so much more out there. You can still be successful without that.
And I think for me, it's been dissecting years of mental defeat. So when I have been at a single school, my passion is African American males. And so countering all of the years that they have been told they can't succeed, or if they won't succeed, or they haven't succeeded, and then they get to the college level, and then it's hard, and then the first thing they want to do is quit.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been the biggest challenge, restructuring their mindset to realize that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
For so long that, they've been taught that it's not possible.
Yeah.
And I think that, we have a hard challenge at the collegiate level, but I think that work needs to start much earlier.
Yeah.
Because, the research says that they make a decision in middle school whether they're going to be serious about the education or not.
That's right.
That's true.
So,
But that's why the HBCU space is so important, though. Not to well, I'm gonna say the HBCU space is so important because it allows for men of color to see other men of color in leadership and to see other men of color professionally in leadership. Growing up in Long Island, New York, I never had a black male educator in my entire life. I had one who was an art teacher. But other than that, I've never seen a black man dress up and go to work each day except my father. And so, or my relatives. And so I think when you get to the HBCU space and you get to be mentored by the grounds people, by the man in the cafeteria, by your professors, by administration, graduate students, fraternity men, campus athletes, SGA leaders, and women of color as well. I think those things are just so different. And I think that space is so important, and something that we really have to cultivate and really support.
Yeah, I can echo what Dr. Hodges is saying. I really think, like I said before, what they'll see, they'll be. And so for many of us, we didn't have a middle school, elementary school, or high school teacher to look like us. I didn't have my first black male teacher until 10th grade, right? And so you have a lot of different things going on. And I think everybody that's probably watching right now had the same experience, whether you're a male or female, not a lot of black teachers. And so what's so funny is that prior to the civil rights movement, though, and prior to desegregation, we had black teachers. Like a teacher was just below being a doctor and a lawyer in our community. And not only that, it was just up there as being a preacher. It was a highly respectable field that a lot of black men and women went into. And I think that changed after the civil rights movement because we were able to go into other professions. A lot of different things changed from there. But again, for black men, it is our responsibility to make sure we take care of our black men. And I agree with Dr. Hodges. The HBCU space gives you that opportunity to be you, right? So I didn't go to the HBCU, but I've worked at HBCUs and I've supported HBCUs and I've seen actual students, black males, come to college. And you guys both can, all three of you can attest to this, is that they're still finding themselves when they come to college. And so, the first time, I've ran all kind of African American male programs at all the schools I've been at, even at
Right.
the HBCU space,
Right.
and they latch on to you, right? They become your kids because they're looking for that. I mean, I've got a young man that to this day calls me kind of like dad. I'm like, dude, I ain't that old to be your dad. But at the same time, I realized I was a role model for him. And so that's a lot of weight, but at the same time, weight I want to carry because I understand he needs that. He needs those conversations. He needs that. And from that, I mean, he's pursuing a doctorate right now. So I met him as a freshman. He's got his bachelor's, his master's, and because of me pushing him a little bit in conversation, he's getting his doctorate. So again, we
Awesome.
need to be in these spaces and having these conversations with these young men overall. So,
And to be fully transparent, I think that helped us too, because many of those days where I'm, going to work and I'm like, why am I still doing this? Some of those students' achievements keep pushing me. I see those students that were like, I'm quitting and I'm not coming back next semester, and then they graduate. I'm like, okay, this is why we do this. Or I had one student like lost both of their parents while they were in undergrad and still finished. So I think the students, because we pour into them so much, I think sometimes we forget they're pouring into us too. Because the work is not easy.
it's not.
The students sometimes forget that the educators are stressed and overworked and tired as well. And so I think it's a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
And it also, Wayne, I think another point to it is this simple fact too, is that there, even though we're coming into the higher ed more and more every day with more brothers, it is the simple fact that you still don't have enough, right, to support you. Because I've worked at schools where I've called all the black male faculty and staff like, hey, I need you to help me, and it's like crickets. You know what I'm saying? And I'm looking like, look, you was in their seats 20 years ago, 30 years ago. All I need is 5 minutes of your time to at least pour some wisdom into these young men and see that, hey, I got a professor over in engineering that looks like me. I got a professor in the College of Business that looks like me. That I have somebody I can at least go and have a quick conversation with from that perspective. And I think it's important for us to understand that, especially at PWIs. At PWIs, we got to play the black tax all the time. And so when you're at a PWI and at school I'm at, where if you're not a male athlete, you know what I'm saying, it's a very small population of non-black male athletes. And then they're looking for someone to pour into them. And they walk into a classroom and it's not that meeting. So you have to be that role model and become that individual and carry that water and carry that weight in a lot of different ways. But you're right. When you see them be successful, walk across that stage, come back, give you a hug, high five, send you a note when you have a kid, or all kind of great stuff that happens. You kind of like, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
So what do you say to the high school males that are interested in going to college but don't because they think they won't be successful? Because there are a lot of black males who are in high school who have an inkling that they want to go to college, but just don't do it because they think they can't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna tell everybody this: you can do anything you set your mind to. And I know that's gonna sound cliche, but it's the truth. We all sit up here with all these degrees, and none of them was easy. But the hustle is always there, right? So one thing that we can do as a people, you know what I'm saying, and we're standing on the shoulders of giants. We can grind. We got grit. If we really want something, we're gonna get out there and hustle. Really college, all it's about, honestly, outside of the classroom, is the hustle. Who do you know? How do you get to know folks who can look out for you? What study groups you getting into? So any black male in high school, I'm gonna tell you to go to college, first of all, because it was fun. Second of all, I'm gonna tell you that it's gonna open up a whole world of opportunity for you that you never would see outside of your neighborhood in some regards, right? And third of all, it will put you in scenarios and situations that you might not have experienced K through 12 yet. and also it's preparing you for the real world and the decisions you will need to make. So, Wayne had mentioned you have brothers that go and like, oh, I'm drop out, go.
Yeah.
I was like, because if you ain't got no plan, where you going? You know, I mean, jobs ain't out here like hiring left and right. So it's one of the things is you got to have a plan, and then you got to work your plan very strong. I've seen the brothers that have come in and really grind and got their grades straight. I'm with that. I got to college and I was like, look, I wasn't the best. I was a smart kid, dumb stuff. I was in high school because I wanted to play sports. I got to college, got real, got my grades right, joined a bunch of organizations, everything like that. And I realized, like, wow, why would I dumb myself down to be cool?
Right.
I want to give a shout out to DeAndre Pickett, who just chimed in and gave a statistic about the state of Georgia, where he said that it happens in K through 12 as well. Thank you for chiming in, DeAndre. I think for me, I would tell young high school men that I too was told I could not be college material. And in 12th grade, I remember when all of my friends were having their college pennants placed on the wall in the guidance office and the counseling office. I didn't have one with my name on it, and I was really embarrassed. And so many people, I tell this in my Jamelevate presentations. The first thing I say is that I didn't think I was good enough. I remember being a senior, and like I said, everyone having their names on pennants, and I didn't go to school until the spring. I didn't go to college in the fall, like everyone else, because my self-esteem had been broken by the K through 12 experience. And so I'm definitely going to do a shameless plug for HBCUs. I think that I would encourage you Black males out there to become HBCU educated, to give an HBCU a chance. If you can go on a campus tour in your local area, or there's a lot of different ones that we can help connect you to that are sponsored by different cities, different alumni chapters in each state. I would highly encourage you to attend a historically Black college university. At least Google it, look it up, find out some information about them, and also think about what you want to be in your future. I think it's important to know what you want your career path to be. What are you passionate about? What are you excited about? I would also say that the great thing about college young men is that unlike high school, there's no mom and dad there every day. And you get to choose your classes. You don't have to take certain classes. Of course, freshman year, you take certain courses, but for the most part, you get to really choose your curriculum. You get to choose your schedule. You get to restart yourself, recalibrate yourself. You get to choose new friends, have new experiences. And so I think for many of us, K through 12 can be daunting. Many of our men of color go through depression and things of that nature as well. And so you get to really restart yourself in a healthy, supporting, nurturing environment. And so I would definitely say, as Dr. Bates said, think highly of yourself. Don't give up. And definitely look at HBCUs. Definitely. And also reach out to us. We're going to give you our information before we end today. If you want to talk to me or any of us, I know we are all happy to communicate with you via email or however else you want to communicate with us. And so please don't give up on yourself. We need you to go to college.
And so it's interesting, when I was in high school, there was a counselor who handled college admission. She refused to submit any of my applications. She told me I was not material. My job was the choir director, and so I had to go to her, and she submitted my stuff to Morehouse. The guidance counselor would not submit it. She said that I should consider trade school.
Yes.
Because I wasn't.
Same thing.
When I became a vice president of the college, I sent her this long letter on my official department stationery with my signature. I mean, it was really petty, but I mean, I read her for filth because she then became the principal of the school. But I mean, it was a little petty. But I just want to let her know that you discouraging people from their potential is not what an educator should do. Let me fail on my own, but you should not be steering me to failure.
That's right.
I mean, I've learned a lot from my failures, but should not be the goal of any educator to steer a student to failure. Then maybe you should consider another career.
Well, it goes back to what Tierney said about the stereotype thread. I mean, we talk about it in our dissertations and our research. It's real. It's real.
And if I had listened to her, I would certainly not be where I am now.
That's right.
Wayne, you hit it on the head. It's so many guys that do those wrong. here trying to hate on people at all. Big supporter, love my teachers, much love. But there are guidance counselors, and I'm gonna ask the question: was it a white female?
No, it was an African American woman.
That's even worse because mine was too, right? And she did the same exact thing. She was more concerned about my brother because my brother was very talented and all this other thing. He's younger than me, but we were in high school at the same time. And she said, "Oh, you should go to the Army or you should go to the Navy." Like that. And I was like, well, "Wait a minute, my grade that bad." You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
All this other stuff. And she was like, "Oh, you'd be better off in the service. I don't expect you to go to college." I said, "Damn." So same way like you, when I got my degree, see, my brother went to college and failed out because he was partying too much. And when I got my degree, I kind of sent her an email. "Oh, remember that time you told me Army and all other great stuff? How you like me now?"
She did my godbrother, and now we both have doctorates in the college people. But it's just, I think that some places the system is broken. We had a question over here from Latasha. How do we get this message to the kids that need to hear it? Virtual connection is proving to be a tool for filling these stated gaps. So how do we get this information to the kids that need to hear it?
I think Brandon. I know for me, my wife, she works in education. She's assistant principal at a high school. And me personally, like just Brandon, like how can I paint a picture that is someone that you want to do, something that you want to do? So a lot of my students, I have a page, a social media page, but we highlight certain things to kind of make it more attractive to our students, especially with younger kids when they see stuff. You have to have some type of connection to them, so something they can kind of gravitate towards. And a lot of times, when we first started hearing about college, we didn't think of me personally. All I thought about was athletics. I didn't know anything else. But seeing other things that you still are attracted to, that you would like, kind of seeing more of that, it just opens up that dialogue for it. And so, I like that question, especially the discovering like how do we towards solutions. That's kind of stuff that I kind of work towards.
I think one of the things is to encourage our students to state what's really going on. I think, one of the challenges of our culture is that we don't have open and honest conversations. And I think if we really want to help, we have to have honest conversations. Sometimes, for instance, I've had students that want to quit school, but it's not really they want to quit school, it's that what they're studying is really not what they should be studying.
Right.
They're stressed, they're overworked. My mom or dad wants me to be a doctor. I hate science. Well, then you don't need to be studying biology. What do you want to do? I had one student that switched to education and now has a master's of education, making much more money than I do. But so sometimes it's that we need to have a serious conversation about what the expectation is and what your goals are, and encourage them to be honest, not what they think we want to hear, because sometimes our young people really tell us what they think we want to hear instead of what's really going on. And I think sometimes if we have those open and honest conversations, that would help too.
I think to answer Latasha's question, Latasha Yvonne, shout out to you for the question as well. I think it's important for us to bring these voices into the school systems, though, in terms of K through 12. I think it's important. We were all in school where we had a speaker come in and talk about, safe sex, abstinence, drugs, etc. Well, we need to have talks about cultural competency as well, and I think we need to have talks about access, and about really and inclusion. And I think those things are important for that population. We know that the college process has to begin way before high school. And so I think it's important for us to look at we know what research shows, that family involvement is one of the key factors to success for men of color. And so whether it's a grandma, uncle, a cousin, even a school coach, mentor, teacher, we need people to really, really be able to bring our voices and voices like these in conversations to that K through 12 environment. And so parents, if you're out there, please promote this. Promote having men of color speak to youth in the school systems. Plugging in for Jamelevate. You can contact me, of course. But all jokes aside, I think it's important to do that. It's really important to have even local people who are from your local neighborhood that went to colleges, encourage them to come back to the school and talk. Those things really, really matter. And for K through 12 kids to see someone from their own neighborhood that has been successful means the world to them. It can change their entire trajectory as men of color. So I think that's important as well.
And I can chime in real quick. Talk about what I don't want to go to college or other alternatives. Everybody needs credentials. I tell people, credentials means the difference between $2 and $5. And certification, that is maybe going to school, and we still need vocational. We're doing that, but now huge demand actually for it because there's a lack of folks actually getting into vocational trades and all this other stuff. And apprenticeships are still available in most states. Start off at $15, $16 an apprenticeship. It leads into a full-time job from that perspective. And at the community college level, I'll tell anybody, don't sleep on the community colleges as well. I know there's always this thing of, you want to go to the 4-year space. The 2-year space, you can get an associate's degree, or you can get exactly what you want, certification-wise, and go right into a job as well. But my dad used to say, if you find your passion, you'll never have to find a job in your life, and money will come.
Yeah, and to further address Dr. Pickett's question about a conversation while a student is in higher ed who realize that college is not where they should be and their passion is that it doesn't require a college degree. So I'll just be very transparent. We get doctors because we need a doctor. We're already usually doing the job we want when we get there. I mean, but the paper just tells everybody else that we're qualified to do what we're doing. Once you get a degree, nobody can take it away from you. There's always the need to have a backup plan. For instance, I have a student that wanted to be a hairdresser. He has just finished hair school, but he also has an undergraduate degree. If something happened to his hand, or if he was unable to stand next to that chair and do hair, he has a degree that qualifies to work in public relations or any area of mass communications and still be able to sustain his life. And so the solution might not be to quit school. The solution may be to study something that they're interested in so that they have other options. And that is the benefit. I'm with Dr. Hodges on support HBCUs. You can find a major at an HBCU for anything.
Yeah.
Study something that you want to study. I mean, everybody's always going for business and the sciences, but there are other degrees. My first 3 degrees are in music. I did music for years and it paid the bills very well. But you can study a lot of different things, but don't just study something to be studying it. But there are other reasons for undergrad. We learn social skills. We learn how to deal with people. HBCUs teach a lot more than just academics.
Yeah.
Latasha's asking, this is a common story for many of us, which is sad. Our kids deserve better. I fully agree. How do we begin to fill this gap?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that was a shout out to Latasha. I think it's important to utilize our town and gown partnerships. Like I mentioned, with some of our local schools, our alumni who are from their hometowns going back and speaking to these kids in the K-12 environment. I think it's important for us to publicize and to help in churches and youth groups and recreational facilities to really help promote when we have college fairs and institutions coming in town. Even if it's a student that you don't think is college material, we should still expose them to that. Because as you heard from us, all of us, well, at least 3 of us, 2 of us were told we weren't college material. And so look at us now. And so I think sometimes if you just bring someone to an experience and expose them to what the possibilities can be, they can change their entire trajectory. Someone said, would it be possible to create a challenge for Black men to upload video? Oh, yeah, that would be awesome. Mm-hmm. She said a challenge to promote ourselves on social media. Mm-hmm. I can't see the whole question. You probably can see it, right?
Would it be possible to create a challenge for Black men to upload videos and share their stories? Especially, we would be creating a career tool for educators to share. Yes, that's possible, and I will try to work on that project. Between the 4 of us, we know a whole lot of people. Right. So that is something that's very doable, and so I'll try to work on that project. Thank you. That's a great idea.
And Latasha,
I'm
if
call
you have someone in your community that you know went to college, that's a young, that's in a current college student or a recent alum, they really have the street cred. Those are the people that should be speaking to the students in the K through 12 environment. So if you know someone, tap them on the shoulder and push them to give back. We owe it to our communities to give back. So I really appreciate your question.
And I think you just brought up a very good point. And I had someone ask me a few weeks ago, why do they always send these old people to talk to us?
Well, I'm old now, so that's why I said college.
And I thought they were talking about me at first, and I was like, well, I'm really not that old. They're like, no, you're probably the youngest person they've ever brought here. And I was like,
I'm telling you, it's true.
That was the biggest basis of my friend I starting out.
It's peer to peer, right?
Having black
so
males
somebody within
come in and talk to them that were athletes.
range is still relevant to you. You know, it's like having a big brother, big sister. You
right.
know, from that perspective. So that's more thing. And then what the sad part is, when we send some of our older folks, they can't connect to the kids. You know what I'm saying? You can't walk in there and dance with the kids, drop a thing, and be like, oh, you wouldn't know about that. I'm like, what you know about that? Like you got to be faithful with them, and they all start listening and respect. I've been to give talk to young males, and I had school come back, like, you come back, like, we had one student, he sat there still through my whole presentation, came to me afterward, gave me a hug, and then started chatting. They were like, we've never seen it like that. I was like, y'all don't know how to connect to the kids.
And I think that's a point that even when I was in school, I remember thinking the exact same thing, or falling asleep on the people, or being like, if I have to listen to one more old person, come talk to me. But I think it brings up a point of being relatable. Yeah. And that transcends age, because there are some older people who are very relatable.
Of course.
But I think that too will answer one of Latasha's earlier questions, about how do we, bring this to younger people. You have to bring people to the space that can relate to where the young people are. When I was at Payne, I listened to trap music and everything else because that's what my students listen to, and I had to be able to meet all of them where they are. And I think sometimes we get really educated and want to prove that we're really educated. And we lose a certain connection that allows us to impact the younger people.
Yeah. And we didn't talk down to them. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like when Bill Cosby years ago, you can't talk to students like that. You mean where they're at. You don't talk down to them. You know what I'm saying? If you earn their respect and earn their listen to you, you talk down to them. You say you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You encourage versus talking down to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should be working more to empower the parent. And I think there's a slight difference, but I think you bring up a very valid point, Dr. Bates. So what are some other valid points or important points that you think need to be imparted to this next generation, gentlemen?
I think it's important that as we continue to change the statistics and have more of our low SES, Pell Grant eligible first generation students go to school, that it's important that we also work on marketing our institutions and the experiences to the families. Because when you educate the parents and educate the families, you then allow for the students to have more access. And so I think that's really, really important. We don't always talk about that. I think one thing I loved about my experience at Tennessee State and Virginia State was the intentionality of really educating parents, having parents come to orientation and spend the night on campus, having them exposed to student affairs professionals, having panel discussions. And so my whole point is really thinking of institutions and K through 12, really thinking about ways in which we can educate parents about resources, financial aid, FAFSA, scholarships and grants, the difference between a grant and a loan, things that we take for granted. Those things are really, really important. And it really helps change the playing field for our students of color who are first generation that may not have that. I was first generation. Now, my grandmother did go to NCCU, but my parents didn't finish college. So, yeah, shout out to And so, but again, my grandma was so much older than me. Like by the time I got to be in school, I mean, she was, I wasn't really talking to her about the college experience, And so my aunt Deborah went to FAMU, so that was a connection. But for me, I never saw myself in that realm. I didn't think I was smart enough, and so that's why I think it's so important to educate parents and caregivers and grandparents about what the possibilities are and how to access the resources. It really can be a game changer.
Either of you?
I think I like the part of I try to work with students controlling their narrative and knowing that they have a story to tell. And then one of my old mentors would always tell me, he's like, tell your story or someone else will tell it for you. And so just trying to get them to empower them really just to know that they have a voice and know they have options and to continue just to build them up. So that's kind of the main thing I really try to work on with my students. I think Bates talking. I can't hear.
I can't hear. Is that Tierney talking?
Yes.
He's frozen. Tierney, you frozen. You supposed to be a member of 5 minutes. Some of you acting like you ice cold frozen. He gonna kill me later, right?
Oh yeah.
Look, he can't talk back. You can't hear him.
He heard that.
He heard that. I know he did.
So we have a question. I think there's a fine line between discouraging a student and having a real conversation about their college options. Can you take us through what you think that conversation should look like so the students are on a path to success regardless of the type of institution, 4-year versus 2-year, they initially enter? So what does that conversation look like when you're discussing their college option?
The crazy thing.
Repeat that question.
Can
you repeat that? I couldn't hear the beginning.
So there's a fine line between discouraging a student and having a real conversation about their college option. Can you take us through what you think that conversation should look like so the students are on a path to success regardless of the type of institution?
It's something simple that I always do. You know that Cosby episode where Huxtable talking to Theo about his budget? What you gonna do? And that's like I'll map it out, like what kind of stuff do you want to do? And then once we go back and you look at it, to kind of start from there. So I think Bates is trying to talk when he keeps freezing.
And I feel when you're young, you need to follow your dreams and follow your passions. Because you're all young, you can trip over your feet, make mistakes, and still land from that perspective. So I think the conversation, am I freezing?
We can hear you now, but you were partly frozen at the beginning, but we good.
So I think having a sit-down conversation, where do they see themselves, how do they see themselves, and then also educating them on what real world things will happen. So I see a lot of students don't realize you don't have to pay the rent, you don't have to pay the car note, you have to pay these bills, and all this other stuff. And it's the difference between paying bills and having money left over and to be able to do what you want to do versus living paycheck to paycheck and all this other great stuff. So understanding if you follow your passion and also build a village around you, because no matter what, if you get the degree, I think you build a village around you. And I think it's very important for you to understand when you build that village, your board of advisors to help move and help you navigate life situations as well. So getting parents that conversation, getting that role model. Again, organization they do a lot of mentors, other great stuff. I think it's sitting on the first and saying, what are you passionate about? And if you're in college, what do you need? What skills do you want to do? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Well, what resources are out there, and trying to put a map together of how you start that.
I think for me, if I could, I guess I'm going to take that question, but also think of it, if I were applying for college, what would I want someone to tell me about the realistic conversation? And it would be that my grades are so important and that what I'm doing right now is so important in 10th, 11th, 12th grade. The decisions that you make at that age can impact your future. Think about how many of us know people, including ourselves, who may have blown off a test or an exam or just thought something wasn't really that important. But then when senior year came and it was time to apply, you regretted some of those grades that you had that you really could have done better with. And so I don't think grades are everything, but I think academics does equal resources at times. And I think that if I could tell students something, it would be that take your education seriously so that when you want to go to school, right now you have to go to school, but when you want to go to school, you have options. If you take your education seriously now, when you want to go to school, you have options. And so you don't have to have a 100, an A on every exam, but I think taking your school experience seriously, thinking about ways to give back to the community and having service on your transcript, having leadership involvement in K through 12 in your high school experiences, being in plays and joining service organizations and clubs, even in high school, those things are important when you're applying to college. The people look at those at the holistic experience of the student, and they want to see where you can contribute to their institution. And so I think those things are really, really important. If you have time, you have time now because we're dealing with this pandemic. So you have time to really sit at home and research and think about what you want to do, who you want to be, who you want to connect with, and how. And so I think those things are really important. And again, back to the families, I think it's important for us to expose our youth to the possibilities of what they can become. It may be a community college first. It may be an HBCU. It may be a PWI. It may be an Ivy League institution. It could be a Hispanic serving institution. It just depends on what the student wants to do and what their resources and skills are.
Now, what were you saying, Drew?
So I was saying earlier, just when I hear students talk, there was a reference from the Cosby Show as far as when he's talking to Theo about his budget, and he's talking about he wants to be a regular person. He was like, well, the government, they come for the regular people first. And so just kind of talking them through that, and then after you kind of get students to kind of open up their plan and say it out loud, they'll find the gaps and holes in it themselves when they say it. And then once you have that relationship with them, you can start trying to give options to fill in those holes, fill in those gaps. Like, okay, well, maybe you try this way. Well, let's look at it from this point. And just not, like you said, talking down to them, because not necessarily, it's more so about how you say it to them, not necessarily what you say. And so basically that relationship, that building on that, and then I forgot his name, Dr. Hodges just said, that family atmosphere, try to create everything and structure everything around a family atmosphere.
Yes.
So I had Dr. Green works at Central. He was talking one time. He told us, we try to change the narrative of, when you go into that little freshman orientation and the guy says, look to your right, look to your left, and somebody's not going to be here.
That's right.
Like, you look to your left, you look to your right. Like, nah, we all gonna get through this. Like, we gonna get through this together. So just like that family type of thing. So that's the kind of thing we try to build.
I think that all of you said one thing is universal. I think it's about relationship. I never discourage students from getting an education, but I think we need to have a realistic plan. I think Dr. Hodges made a valid point. Sometimes that is not what may be their first choice. If you struggled in high school, what I never would want to do is set you up for failure by putting you in a situation where you're not going to be successful. So if you have some deficiencies, perhaps a year or two at a community college will be beneficial. So maybe the plan is to set you up at a community college where you still do work that is transferable, so you can fill those deficiencies. But if you go sometimes straight to a four-year institution, that might not be the best choice. And then you potentially could be exhausting a lot of money that could be spent in a different way. But it's a plan. Sometimes I think we have to look at what the ultimate goal is. And I think often students come to college because they just like, we need to go to college, and we don't have a plan. Like, why are we in college?
Right.
You just came to college. You know what you want to do for a career. And I've met with first year students all the time, and they're like, well, I don't know what I want to do. But you're a chemistry major. Well, I mean, they had said I had to pick a major. Okay, well, we need to have a different conversation today. Chemistry is the second hardest major on this campus. And so, I mean, sometimes it's just about having those open conversations. A relationship is very important.
Yes.
Right, thank you. No problem. Glad that you're joining this. I guess it's morning still. It's a long day.
Morning.
Yeah, it's all a blur. I'm losing days with COVID stuff. While we're here, share with us what are some of the things that you think specifically would positively impact a Black male student, like positively impact a Black male student.
Well, I'm not to be a walking textbook, but my dissertation was on the impact that pre-college outreach programs have on Black male success.
I know.
Huh?
I know. I read it.
Well, thank you. And so I learned that having high expectations, having parent involvement, and having someone who looks like them or that they relate to are key factors for success for men of color, and having opportunities for them to be exposed to leadership outside the classroom. So, that whatever that means, co-curricular experiences, those things all matter. And it doesn't have to be the specific parents doing it. When we say parent involvement, it could be any family member, any person close to that student that they trust and that they love. Those experiences, it could be an aunt, a cousin, an uncle, a friend of the family, a neighbor. Those things really, really matter. We already talked about exposure and access and community partnerships, but those are some of the things that I think more internally that help out those men, our men of color, young men of color.
I would echo what Dr. Hodges. It's all about experience, exposure, and education. And so, I would definitely say if we can expose them into pre-college programs, expose them just in their own communities, because there's a lot of people who will grow up and they never been outside their little 4 blocks or just been to the mall and home. That's it. So what's in your community even to discover from an exposure standpoint? Education is key. And it's not just education in the books, but, I grew up around a lot of older men because of my dad. The education that they can deliver and give you insight from a wisdom standpoint as well. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's very important also to include mentorship. So, you have people who are Black males need some mentorship. So getting them involved in a mentorship program or finding a gentleman or older gentleman who'll be willing to mentor and work with them, or a village of gentlemen, I like to say, to help them get that mentorship that they need from that perspective as well. Because mentorship for me was really big. My dad was there. I grew up in my house with my dad and my mom and all that other great stuff. But my dad's friends were very important to me because of the life lessons they taught me being around them and stuff like that. And I can go to them and ask them questions when I didn't feel comfortable asking my dad in some cases and situations. And they would tell me this is what you should do or how you should handle it. So it was great mentorship from that perspective. But education, exposure, it definitely is very much the key to a lot of things, the impact from a positive standpoint for our Black males.
I just want to shout out one of my undergrad brothers, Torrance Harvey, the mayor of Newburgh, is online here. Oh, of course, shouting out this alpha that's on this.
That's right. Hey, boy!
You said Newburgh? Is he in Newburgh, North Carolina?
Newburgh, New York.
New York, got it.
Brother Wayne, one more thing. Since you gave the men of Alpha Phi Alpha an amazing shout out.
Most of my friends are alphas.
Never that.
I do think it's important to utilize those resources in the community, though. Every city has an alumni association of something. So Phi Mu Alpha, it could be a social organization, Alpha Phi Alpha, Phi Beta Sigma, Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Beta Phi Theta, 100 Men of America, 100 Black Men of America, Collegiate 100. I mean, there are so many. The Masons. There's so many things that are in our communities that we don't tap into all the time that we could, and it's free. They're not going to charge you to come speak to your son, to do things and to work with them. And so I think those things are important too. Like, we have to wake up and know, we have to know what's in our own communities as well and expose our kids to it.
Definitely.
Drew, where's your Kappa hat? I didn't say that. No, somebody else said that. What the Kappa
said? My good frat brother.
Drew represents. He represents.
We told the Kappas to be ready. We said wear your Greek hat and your college shirt.
We try to make an impact where we can. I like what everybody says, because I like to look at y'all and kind of take little bits and pieces of y'all and bring it back to our campus. I teach a freshman seminar course, and honestly, a lot of that is just mentoring and just being there, being available. And Doctor, we were talking earlier right before this started. As soon as you put a formal atmosphere on it, it's like they just kind of back up. So we try to like really just play it down. Like we have a thing on campus to where alumni come back during homecoming week and they'll talk to some of our course classes. We got like an alumni social during homecoming. They'll come back and just kind of meet people and to establish those relationships, because that when you put that formal piece on it, it's like all of a sudden they just kind of back up and get kind of nervous. But just the being available really is just kind of what really will take you longer than you think.
Latasha's asked about teaching Black men and women about healthy relationships. So that's been a big push, I know, at HBCUs over the last few years, and very publicly a push. And I'll speak to what's going on here in the AUC. There's been a lot of training and workshops in the AUC on rape culture, relationship building, the yes, no concepts, especially in light of what has happened in the last year in terms of deaths here in the AUC. And I know when I was at Payne, we did a lot of work on relationships, and not just intimate relationships, but there is a big adjustment for many students when you move from a home with your parents and maybe two siblings into a building with potentially 100, 200, or 300 people that you live with on a 24-hour basis, and there is no reprise. You don't get to go anywhere else and take a break. So there is a certain level of immediate stress that comes with that type of, adjustment. So there has been a lot of work in the HBCU space around that. I went to one, and I will be honest, when I was an undergrad, we didn't have any kind of relationship workshops, and we just didn't do any of that. So there has been a lot of work in the area. I'm not going to say that we're done with it, but I know there is a lot of that going on now. And I'm very proud that many schools is not just being led by the staff and administration. A lot of it is being led by students. And they're having very open and honest conversations about what's going on. So that is very empowering for me to know that the students are involved in that process. Anyone else want to comment on that question?
Well, I think it's important to educate students about, as you said, the resources and as well as the celebration months. April, as we know, is a time where we celebrate domestic violence. Not celebrate, we educate about that. There's a national program specifically that HBCUs have created called Denim Day, where we all wear denim and jeans to represent, to show our leadership around that and our care around that topic. Back in the day, there was a young lady who was raped, and the moral of the story goes where because she had on jeans, they say she couldn't have possibly have been raped. And so we wear denim now to represent that and to really give her voice more meaning in today's society. But I think those educational programs are really important. I think, again, I keep saying family atmosphere and family education. A lot of what our students bring to the campuses and into their outside experiences are sometimes are things that they've seen or learned at home. And so I think it's important for us to really educate at home and to make sure that we are exposing our children to what is appropriate as much as we can. But this generation is they have a different challenge where I grew up to a different world, the Cosby Show, the Jeffersons, I Love Lucy had two separate beds. I mean, that was what I saw as a kid. And today you can see anything without going into detail. You can see anything
on your phone. On your phone.
And so that's where parenting comes in place and family support comes in place and restrictions on devices and things of that nature. Those things matter. And I'm not trying to downplay, I just think those things matter. I think sometimes we get exposed to inappropriate experiences, you know, and students are seeing, and some of our youth are seeing some celebrities act a fool on TV and do things that are foolish and be abusive and things like nation. So I think if they're being exposed to that, then that's what they're gonna copy. And so we have to be vigilant in assuring that we expose our kids to the right things. Not shielding them from the realities, of course, but just making sure that they see things appropriately.
And you bring up a very good point, Latasha. You're saying that, you know, by the time they get to college, we're running damage control. And that is a reality.
Yes.
We are, and
they've already been wild.
All of our campuses about the fact we are running damage control. And the challenge with that is the educational system, secondary and below, is not set up to assist in parenting. Do you know, moral structure and upbringing, our home thing? Then when you get to college, we kind of have to assist with that because most of the students live on campus. And so the home life then shifts to our campuses. And so we do have to then, you know, assist with those things that were never done with the educational system. So you bring up a very valid point. And unfortunately, that is a challenge with higher ed. And then, you know, like Dr. Hodges said, everyone on the campus has different moral fiber, different rules and guidelines by which they were brought up. You also deal with, you know, differences from where people were raised, liberals versus conservatives, and so it's a challenge. And one of the things we even have to deal with in terms of teaching people relational building is living with people who have different views and you being okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge, even not sometimes with the students, but with adults.
I don't know if y'all feel this way, since, you know, we're all men. I'll talk to my guy students, you know, about, you know, healthy relationships, but I still kind of feel uneasy about having those conversations, you know, with my female students, just because, you know, I just don't want to really tell them or make them feel any type of way. But I always talk to my guys like about, you know, what you're supposed to be doing, stuff like that. So I didn't know if y'all come into those certain situations or encounters as well.
Well, I think that's the power. I think that goes back to the question earlier, where that's the power of having voices and beings like us on a college campus and in the K-12 environment. I mean, if you've never had a man teach you how to be a man, then you have to struggle on your own and trying to find out what that means. And some of the actions that students take and some of the inappropriateness comes from frustration of the lack thereof. You know, not having that figure as a father or a big brother or whatever it may be. And they tend to have to go out there and learn on their own. And so that's why it's important for us to be present in those spaces. I know that one of the young men on the call chimed in and said that even in the K-12 system, only 3% of the teachers are African Americans in Georgia.
Yeah, and that's Dr. Pickett's doctorate is in education, and he's one of our K-12 specialists here.
That's powerful. I mean, we're talking about college, but what about before? You know, like I said, I didn't have a teacher, a black male leader in front of me besides my dad either. So sometimes, unfortunately, our students don't learn until they get to the college environment, and so that's why our voices and our presence is really important.
And Drew, to address your point, I had that same challenge until I became a vice president and dean, and then I had no choice but to discuss those things with my female students. Because a female comes to my office, I can't be like, I'm not talking to you because but then for some reason, they started being very comfortable with coming and talking to me. Then sometimes the conversation I would bring one of my counselors in because I'm like, I don't really want to have a discussion with you by yourself. But the higher you get up the chain, you sometimes have to have conversations because of the position. But I was like that at first because I was like, this is not something I want to talk to you about. But I fully agree with what you're saying. I was very comfortable with my male students, but yeah.
I definitely get you.
Well, we are at the end of our time. If you all could just, as we close, share with the viewers how they can reach you all if they want to. And then we will just wrap up our session. I want to thank all of you all for being on this morning.
Thanks for inviting us. It's been an awesome time hanging with you guys this morning.
You are welcome.
Well, my name is Dr. Jame'l Hodges. I can be reached at Jamelevate, JamelEvate @gmail.com. That's my Twitter handle, my Instagram, and my Facebook as well. So please feel free to reach out to me.
Shout out to everybody. Again, Wayne, Drew, Jame'l, it's been a pleasure. Find me, Dr. Tierney Bates, tbates1914 @gmail.com. tbates1914 is everything, my Twitter, Instagram, all that, in the Bates group on Facebook. But I give my cell phone out to everybody. Nobody ever calls. I think it's hilarious. I'm like Mike Jones. Call me. 330-701-1914. Yeah, 330-701-1914. There's no way you cannot get a hold of me.
My name's Drew. Appreciate you having us today, man. Really enjoyed it. I can be reached at Cape and Drew Podcast, gmail.com, Instagram, Cape and Drew Podcast, also DJ921. Would definitely love to be a part of anything you guys got going forward.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm just putting a new tag on the bottom of this page. And I'm glad you all joined. So next Saturday will be a part 2 with different guests. But thank you all so much. Reach out to these guys. They're good people, very knowledgeable. Thank you all, gentlemen. Have a good day.
You too.
You too. Thank you, brothers. Y'all be good.
This has been great.
Stay cold, Tierney. Stay ice cold.